All right, while I fuss with my computer, the webcam, everything else, let us bask in the glory that is my Calgary jersey collection, minus the horse head. I'm looking around for the horse head. I know it's around here somewhere. Be dipped if I know where it is. But I have the Calgary horse head jersey too. And I haven't seen for years the old 1980s style Calgary Flames jersey. Not unlike this, but in white. Somebody got rid of it. Wasn't me. All right. Let's get into. Where was I? See, and then the camera just froze. I'm like, wait, the camera froze. How'd the camera freeze? How's the camera freeze? Don't want that one. There we go. The Flames originated in Atlanta, which entered the NHL along with the New York Islanders at the start of the 72-73 season. Both franchises were awarded as a result of keeping an upstart rival league, the World Hockey Association, out of both cities. So without the WHA, you probably don't get the Atlanta Flames, and maybe not the Calgary Flames. Without the expansion-hungry NHL in 1999 deciding to go back to Atlanta, you probably don't have the Winnipeg Jets right now. Atlanta, thank you, from Canada. In the fall of 1971, the WHA was being organized, threatening to lure talent away from the NHL with lucrative salaries. New rinks were being constructed in Atlanta and Uniondale, New York. Uniondale, New York. No period there, Shannon. Stop doing that. The WHA wanted its teams to occupy those arenas and approached the owner of NBA's Atlanta Hawks, Tom Cousins, as well as officials from New York's Nassau County, respectively, to gain interest. Both parties, however, had their sights set on the NHL. League president Clarence Campbell, who was around forever, granted the two expansion franchises on November 7th, 1971. Cousins, who paid a $6 million entry fee for the team, named the team the Flames after the fire that nearly destroyed Atlanta during the American Civil War, resulting from a march led by General William Tecumseh Sherman. The Flames had a respectable showing in their 8-year existence in Atlanta. Their first-year coach was legendary Hall of Fame member Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion. The team finished at or above 500 in the regular season from 1974-75 onward, but they never won a playoff series despite making it to the postseason 6 times. At the same time that their expansion cousins, the Islanders, hoisted their first Stanley Cup in 1980, the Flames moved north to Calgary. Interest in hockey had been lukewarm in the Deep South, where baseball, basketball, football, and college sports had long been the primary focus. It's a good thing that's changed now. They're still trying. In addition, Atlanta could not keep up with the costs of operating against a competing hockey league, the WHA. Cousins was prepared to sell the team to a group led by Harley Hotchkiss and brothers Darren and Byron Seaman for $14 million. But Vancouver real estate magnate Nelson Skalbania trumped the Hotchkiss-Seaman bid by $2 million, and Cousins accepted the higher offer. The team retained the Flames nickname as it moved north of the border, the fiery logo resonating with Calgary's oil-producing population. The Flaming A was replaced with the Flaming C, which is now black, because flames are black. The 6,500-seat Calgary Corral on the grounds of the Stampede was home to the Flames for 3 years before it moved into the arena now known as Scotiabank Saddledome. It used to be just known as the Calgary Saddledome. Skalbania eventually sold his interest in the team to the Hotchkiss-Seaman Group, and the Flames developed into one of the league's powerhouses in the 80s, winning the Stanley Cup in 1989. They would have won a lot more Stanley Cups, if not for this kid named Gretzky and some players that he had playing with him. It was frustrating as a Flames fan in the 80s, and I was. In the 80s, you had to kind of pick, because Battle of Alberta was how it always ended up. Vancouver was always out, Winnipeg was always out, LA was always out. So the Battle of Alberta was always on, and you had to pick. In the 80s, you had to pick. You're either a Flames fan or an Oilers fan. And I thought the Oilers were obnoxious, so I cheered for Calgary, which is ironic considering the way that ended up. But I was a Flames fan, I guess, as a young kid, and I'm talking like when I was 10, 11 years old. My favorite teams would have been the Canucks would have been first. Second would have been Calgary. Third, Montreal. I'll let that sink in. Yeah, it would have been those three. Boston didn't come along until I was in high school in terms of me cheering for them. But it was Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal. Those were my three favorite teams. And Calgary was a team that I cheered for based on some of the guys they had. So let's take a look here. Calgary's top draft choices. There's a page in this book on their top draft picks. Dennis Sear in 1980 was number 13 overall. Not a great draft pick. Al McInnes, number 15 overall in 1981. Loved McInnes. I was always a big fan of Al McInnes. Even though I wasn't a huge fan of teams he played on, I was a big fan of him. Dan Quinn was the number 1 draft pick in 1983. Bad rep for that guy. Gary Roberts was the number 1 pick in 1984. Gary Roberts, legend. Even when he was with the Leafs and I didn't cheer for the Leafs, I still like Gary Roberts. When he went to Florida, I cheered for Gary Roberts in Florida. You have to cheer for a guy who went through injuries that probably should have ended his career and almost did, but through his strength and conditioning, he made it. And that's why now he's a strength and conditioning coach for players in the offseason. So if you want to get stronger, you want to get better, you want to get faster, you go to Gary Roberts' camp. The guy's amazing. So in 1985, the number 1 pick was Chris Biotti. Whoever. 1986, it was George Palawa. It's 1987, Brian Deasley. 1988, Jason Mazzotti. I remember Mazzotti. 1989, there wasn't one. 1990, Trevor Kidd, who had a relatively decent career. I mean, goaltending is tough, and Kidd managed to salvage a pretty good career. It was what was a rough start. 1991, Nicholas Sundblad. 1992, Corey Stillman. I loved Corey Stillman's game. I respected Corey Stillman quite a bit. 1993, Jesper Matson. 1994, Chris Dingman. 1995, Dennis Gauthier. 1996, Derek Morris, who played in the NHL. 1997, Daniel Tkachuk, who did not. 1998, Rico Fata, who was number 6 overall. And whenever he touched the puck, I used to say, "Hello, Fata. Hello, Mata." Here we are at Camp Granada, and it wasn't that funny, but it stuck. I would say it. Thankfully, he didn't last in the NHL very long, so I didn't go insane. Number 11 overall pick in 1999 was Oleg Saprykin. I liked Saprykin okay. He was all right. He was a decent utility forward. 2000, Brent Cron, number 9 overall. 2001, Chuck Kobasu. 2002, Eric Nystrom. 2003, Dion Phaneuf, number 9 overall that year. 2004, at 24th, they drafted Chris Chucko. 2005, they drafted Matt Pellich. 2006, they drafted Leland Irving, who I thought was going to make it, and then he didn't. 2007, Michael Backlund, who's actually an NHL player, oddly enough. 2008, Greg Nemish. 2009, Tim Erickson. I remember Tim Erickson got traded out of Calgary because he wanted to go to a team that was going to give him a top 6 spot. And he felt he'd earned a top 6 spot on the blue line. He hasn't had a top 6 spot since then, anywhere. He's been in numerous organizations. He's in the minors right now. 2011, Sven Berchi. So they didn't have a draft pick in 2010 in the first round. 2011, Sven Berchi, who the jury's still out on Berchi. I got to say, as a Canucks fan, I still think they overpaid with a second-round draft pick. 2012, Mark Jankowski. 2013, they drafted a star in Sean Monahan. And then at 22 overall that year, they drafted Emile Poirier, who it's still up for grabs whether that guy's going to be an NHLer or not. 2013, Morgan Klimchuk. No idea how he's doing. I know he's not in the NHL right now. And then it stops in 2014 with Sam Bennett at number 4 overall. So recent history for the Flames has been better than their distant history. Drafting has not been Calgary's strong suit in the first round. They've had gems later on in the draft, whether it's Joel Otto or it's Theron Fleury. Nieuwendyke's not in here. He wasn't a first-round draft pick. Like they've managed to come out with some pretty good players. Mike Vernon was a pretty good goaltender in his day. Calgary milestones. Most seasons, Jerome McGinley was 16. You know what? For the milestones, since this book isn't completely up to date, this book's actually, it's $5 for a reason. It's actually a year or two old, so I'm not going to go with those milestones. I'll go into my other book right here with that. Best game ever in Calgary. This is hard to read as a Canucks fan, okay? You guys who cheer for Calgary, you owe me one for this, all right? Because I'm reading my most painful memory from when I was 16 years of age. I was 16 when this happened, and I remember it because it really was heartbreaking. It was the first time the Canucks really, truly broke my heart. The 1989 series was something. It was something amazing, and to this day, I feel that the Cinderella story of the Canucks was snuffed out early. That better be the neighbor. Better be the neighbor. It's the neighbor. I was gonna say if my kid's coming home from school, it's only 12 o'clock. I'm gonna be angry. Okay. The Calgary Flames won their second straight President's Trophy in 1988-89, which is saying something because again, this was during the heyday of the Oilers, and were the overwhelming favorites against the Vancouver Canucks in the Smythe Division semifinal. Vancouver, a sub-500 team, finished 43 points in arrears of Calgary in the regular season and had only won once in the previous 18 regular season games between the two clubs. The history between Vancouver and Calgary has been lopsided. And I admit it's been lopsided in Calgary's favor. As much as Canuck fans who are young may say, oh, well, Calgary's only just started coming up again. No, Calgary's been a much better team than Vancouver for a majority of the years of their existence. But when the Canucks, Paul Reinhart scored the overtime winner on the road in Game 1, Vancouver served notice that it was not to be taken lightly. I went nuts. When Paul Reinhart scored that goal in Game 1, I went insane. And that was the moment when Paul Reinhart became my favorite player in the league, my favorite defenseman ever. And to this day, Paul Reinhart is one of my 10 favorite defensemen I've ever seen. Reinhart was so clutch and fantastic at everything he did. I didn't need advanced stats for that either. I just knew he was a pretty damn good defenseman. Vancouver served notice with that. Okay. Calgary replied with a 5-2 win in the second game before the team split the next two games in British Columbia. And I remember when it was 2-2 series after 4 games, I'm like, okay, seriously, is this really happening? Is Vancouver actually entertaining the idea of upsetting Calgary in the first? This is not supposed to happen. We're the loser Canucks. This is not supposed to happen. Mike Vernon recorded a shutout in the 5th game to push the Canucks to the brink of elimination. And I think all Canuck fans at that point went, okay, well, they've had a good run. And, they're going to go out in 6, but it's okay. It's okay. It's fine because, they have no business being in this series. But the Brazilian Canucks took Game 6 by a score of 6-3 thanks to a 2-goal performance by Rich Sutter, another Canuck I loved, sending the series back to the Saddledome for a decisive 7th game. Both goalies were sharp to begin the first period. Vernon and his counterpart, Kirk McLean, kept the game scoreless through 9 minutes of play. Calgary's Joe Nieuwendyk and Vancouver's Robert Nordmark opened the scoring for their teams with power play goals. Interesting moment here. That is the only time Robert Nordmark did anything of note as a Canuck. Before the period was over, the Flames took the lead when Al McInnes' wicked point shot deflected off Gary Robertson under the crossbar. Without the benefit of video replay, still 3 years away, referee Bill McCreary consulted with the off-ice officials before confirming the goal. It was a little high. Special teams continued to dominate during the second period. Trevor Linden, a hero, equaled the score at 2:04 with another Vancouver power play goal. This was when Vancouver had a power play that could score. The current Canucks should watch these guys. The Flames regained the lead in the final minute of the middle frame when Joe Mullen's shot glanced off Canucks defenseman Harold Sneps and into the net on a Calgary man advantage. Not the first time Harold Sneps had a goal go in off of him accidentally. The 1982 final, I believe, something like that happened in Game 1. Or he just handed the puck away to the Islanders, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Harold Sneps wasn't on the ice for some great memories for the Canucks. And yet he's a beloved man in Canuck lore. He really is. Vancouver's Doug Lidster had the only marker in the third period to force overtime, and Lidster was a warrior. As they had done over the first 60 minutes of the game, the two teams played with frantic urgency, creating several scoring chances with their attacks off the rush, followed by dangerous counterattacks. Stan Smeel had the best chance to end the game for Vancouver, but he was stoned by Vernon's quick glove hand on a breakaway. And to this day, I wish it hadn't been Smeel on the breakaway. I wish it had been Linden. If it had been Linden, the game would have been over. Because Trevor Linden at that point was a sniper. And Stan Smeel, a beloved Canuck at that point, was not a scoring machine. His final year in the NHL, he had 1 goal. And I'm trying to remember 88, 89, he didn't have much more than that. When it appeared that a second overtime period was looming, Jim Poplinski, centering pass, bounced off the skate of Joel Otto in the crease and into the Vancouver goal. Skate was in the crease. Puck bounced off his skate into the goal. The thrilling Game 7 win clinched the first of 4 series victories for Calgary on their way to its first Stanley Cup title. I still hate that. I'm being honest. I hate that. I hate that his foot was in the crease, that the puck went off his skate, that in every Vancouver Canuck admittedly biased eye, he kicked it. We were all like, he kicked that. And I remember after that series, I was very angry. I had a friend that lived in Edmonton who knew I was very angry. We exchanged letters regularly. Letters are something you actually put in the mail and sent back and forth. We would send newspaper articles, so I'd get stuff from the province of Vancouver. He'd send stuff from the Edmonton newspapers out to me. We would compare notes on how the reporting was between Vancouver and Edmonton. It was kind of fun to do. After Joel Otto scored, what he did to make me feel better was he acquired about 30 Joel Otto hockey cards, put them in an envelope, and sent it to me. Like a note, like said, "Here you go, buddy." I was like, "You're an asshole," and I admit I laughed. Wholeheartedly admit I laughed. It was really a funny thing, but it showed just how upset I was. I was very upset, and that was. It's a funny thing because for Calgary fans, that's the only year that they've gone to the final, won the Stanley Cup, and that's their greatest memory. And for a Canucks fan, it's a bad memory. That 89, it was so close. The 89 team, they worked so hard. I remember they had a 7-game winning streak, and everybody at my school, they were still saying, "Oh, the Canucks suck. They suck. They suck." And I kept saying, "Yeah, but there's something different now." I loved Linden. I loved Kirk McLean, Doug Lidster, Paul Reinhardt, of course, and I felt like they were on the verge of doing something. And I got made fun of at school for that, but I felt like there was something good coming down the road. And that series made it seem like I was potentially right, or the others were right, because it was a 7-game series. I could say, well, they took them to overtime in Game 7, and then the anti-Canuck fans could say, yeah, but they're still losers. Like, they were happy and I was happy. Kind of. I was still pissed. I still am. And that was 27 years ago. I still just kicked it. You kicked the damn puck in. All right. Top trades. So Calgary's biggest trades. This track's their biggest trades. Calgary Flames trade Joe Nieuwendyk to Dallas for Jerome McGinley and Corey Millen. That was a trade that worked for both because Jerome McGinley became everything to Calgary. And Joe Nieuwendyk helped Dallas win the Stanley Cup. Dallas knew that they were probably one player away, and so they went with this trade, and it worked really, really well for them. Honorable mention was 1981. Calgary Flames trade Don Lever and Bob McMillan to Colorado Rockies for Lanny McDonald and a 4th-round draft pick, which became Mikko Makela. Lanny McDonald was the inspirational leader in 1989, and as much as I was angry in 1989, I couldn't be mad at Lanny. He had to suffer through Toronto. He had to suffer through Colorado. And when he got that win in Calgary, I think everybody in Canada was happy for Lanny and the mustache. You had to be happy for the mustache. And I think, does he get 2 rings? Does he get one for himself and one for the mustache? I think he should. He definitely should. But Calgary is a team with a very, very good history. It's just the fact that starting in 96, 97, when they missed the playoffs, and then it just got worse. Calgary went through what a lot of Canadian teams went through, where they couldn't afford the salaries that were being paid out because of the low Canadian dollar. They didn't have. I mean, I went through their draft picks. Their development system was not great. And what are you doing, Speedy? What? What do you don't need to have the paper there. You're gonna make noise. Why don't you? Here you go. I'll put it there for you. Just play there. Okay? Good girl. Anyways, Calgary went through a long drought. They went from 97 to 2003. They had no playoffs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, they had 7 years in a row without playoffs. Recently, starting in 2010, they went 1, 2, 3, 4. They had 5 years without playoffs. Then they missed the playoffs last year, so they missed 6 out of 7. It is easy for younger fans, especially, to say, "Well, Calgary sucks." And I know last year, when Calgary went from being up here to being back down, I got kind of a chuckle out of it, only because at this point in the year last year, Flames fans were really digging at Canucks fans. At least on my Facebook feed, they were. And I thought it was funny. It's like, it's early. And you guys, I know you beat us in the playoffs last year, but it's a new season. And then Calgary just floundered. Absolutely floundered. The 260 goals against last year is what killed them. They only lost 10 goals for, but they ballooned up by 44 goals against, and you can't do that. If you look at, yeah, I figured he'd own it, but I figured I'd check. For points, Jerome McGinley has 1,095 in his career in Calgary. Al McInnes has the most assists with 609. Interesting, too, is the longest consecutive game streak belongs to Jerome McGinley with 441. So not only did Jerome McGinley play a hard-nosed game, but he was healthy for a lot of it. Most points in the season by a defenseman, 103 by Al McInnes in 90-91. Most penalty minutes in the season, Tim Hunter with 375. Most penalty minutes career, Tim Hunter with 2,405. And Tim Hunter was an assistant coach with the Canucks as well. So, and he played for the Canucks too. I never disliked Tim Hunter. As much as I talk about dirty players, I never saw Tim Hunter as being one of those guys. Most assists in the season, Kent Nilsson with 82. I've discussed Kent Nilsson in previous videos. His soft play was legendary. The idea that you can score more than a point a game and still have a team go, but we'd rather not have you in the lineup. Even in the 80s, when goals were being scored by the bushelful, the idea of a guy that could score 100 points being considered kind of worthless was shocking. And Kent Nilsson, sadly, was that guy. Most assists in a game, Guy Chouinard had 6. Gary Suter had 6. So Calgary's an interesting team in terms of where they're at, where they've been. Where they've been is Atlanta. Let's go here. I'm just going to look up some more stats here because I, like many others, enjoy my stats. Yeah, games played, Jerome McGinley's number 1, and it's not even close for second or fourth. Jerome McGinley owns the record book in Calgary, much like Gilbert Perreault owns the one in Buffalo. It is not even close. Number 2 in games played is Robin Regeer with 826. You could win a bet on Robin Regeer and being number 2 on that list. Al McInnes, 803. Theoren Fleury, 791. Joel Otto, 730. Jim Poplinski, 711. Gary Suter, 617. Mark Giordano, 602. This is current to Halloween of 2016. Jamie McCowan, 586. Gary Roberts, 585. Goals. Jerome McGinley's number 1 with 525. Theoren Fleury second with 364. Then Joe Noondike with 314. Gary Roberts, 257. Kent Nilsson, 229. Lanny McDonald, 215. Al McInnes, 213. McDonald, too, he had 66 goals in one season. It was just this freak thing. Eric Vale, 206. Guy Schwinard, 193. Håkan Lube, 193. Håkan Lube. I always liked Håkan Lube, just for his name. His name made him awesome. Assists, Al McInnes, as I said, leads with 609. Jerome McGinley second with 570. Then Theoren Fleury with 466. Gary Suter 436. Guy Schwinard 336. Paul Reinhart 336. Reinhart's actually 10th on the points list with 445 as well. Tom Lysiak's 9th on assists with 276. Jim Poplinski, 266 assists, is 10th on that list. Kent Nilsson's in 7th with 333. On the points list, Theoren Fleury's 2 with 830. Then Al McInnes with 822. Then Joe Nundyk with 616. Gary Suter, 564. Kent Nilsson, 562. Guy Schwinard, 529. Gary Roberts, 505. Eric Vale, 452. And then Paul Reinhart is 10th with that 445, as I mentioned. Penalty minutes. Number 1, as I said, Tim Hunter. 2 is Gary Roberts with 1,736. Interestings on this list. Theoren Fleury with 1,339. He always had a rough temper. Ronnie Stern, 1,288. He's in 6th. 7th, Willie Plett with 1,265. Jerome McGinley made the list with 831, but he's in 10th. And then wins, Mika Kiprusoff leads there with 305. He also leads in losses with 192. Mike Vernon second on the wins list with 262. Dan Bouchard, I love Dan Bouchard, 168. Reggie Lemelin, another goalie I really liked, 144. He's in 4th. Phil Muir had 76. Trevor Kidd, I mentioned him earlier, 72. Roman Turek at 63. He flamed out fast. Rick Walmsley, 53, and then tied for 9th are Pat Riggin. I love Pat Riggin, 51, and Freddie Brathwaite, 51. Let's see. Shutouts. Mika Kiprusoff, 41, followed by Dan Bouchard with 20, Mike Vernon with 13, Roman Turek, 12, Fred Muir and Fred Brathwaite tied for 5th with 11. Then Trevor Kidd had 10. Reggie Lemelin had 6. Lemelin didn't have a lot of shutouts, but nobody did in the 80s. Kerry Ramo is 9th with 5. And then in 10th place, four-way tie with 4 shutouts. Pat Riggin, Rick Walmsley, Rick Tabaracci, and Jamie McLennan. And then save percentage. Number 1 is Mika Kiprusoff with 913. Surprisingly, second is Kerry Ramo with 911. Then Fred Brathwaite with 909. Roman Turek, 906. Jonas Hiller with a 905 is 5th. Trevor Kidd, 898. Rick Tabaracci, 896. Reggie Lemelin, 884. Again, that was the 80s. Mike Vernon, 883. And Rick Walmsley, 878. So Vernon's well represented. Mike Vernon was, I still think the best goalie they had. I know everybody's going to, oh, it's Kiprusoff. And I get that. I would understand people saying Kiprusoff. I personally would say the best Flames goalie, I would say, was Vernon. That Stanley Cup win in '89 was, a lot of it was on him. And then he did it again with Detroit. The year that he won the Cup in Detroit, he was actually a big part of the reason. I know everybody always says, oh, Detroit didn't need a goalie. They didn't, but they had some pretty good ones when they won. Osgood usually outplayed guys, but that's Detroit, and this is Calgary. So, yeah, they've got a really, really solid franchise history to work with. I know they've been off to a bit of a rocky start this year, and there certainly will be some arguing between Calgary and Edmonton fans this season, probably for the first time in 2 decades. They can both lay claim to being a pretty damn good team. And it would be best for hockey to have the Battle of Alberta in the playoffs again. Anybody who says, well, it'd be nice to see different teams against each other in the playoffs every year, all you need is one Battle of Alberta to change that opinion. One series between Montreal and Toronto would do it too. Or Montreal-Boston always makes me feel like, it's Christmas, win or lose, because those series are always so hard fought, and they hate each other so much. And I think divisional matchups in the playoffs are the best. Anyways, that's my take on the Flames. I think with the team that they have now, and with the probably the best GM they've had. I'm not a huge fan of Glenn Gulletson, but I like him better than Hartley. I think Bob Hartley is a good coach for a season or two, and then once he wears out his welcome with the way that he coaches, it goes downhill fast. So once the players adjust to Gulletson, I honestly think Calgary's in the playoffs. And if Calgary and Edmonton both make the playoffs, hopefully San Jose's first and Calgary and Edmonton get second and third, and they can play it out in the playoffs. Because who wouldn't want to see the Battle of Alberta again in hockey? I would be there. I would stream every game, watching every game, and this is the jersey I'd be wearing. And I apologize to Oilers fans out there, because it's fun to see McDavid, and it's fun to see all these young kids play in Edmonton and see how well they're doing. But this right here, that's it. Anyways, that's my Calgary video, my take on the Flames history. And I know there's a lot of stuff that I could have thrown in here, but I figured I'd just keep it with, just general knowledge stuff, and throw in some stuff from a book and a magazine here and there. And if you didn't learn anything, you're probably already a Calgary fan, and if you learned anything, you probably aren't. So it's one of those things. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're just browsing through, and I will be back again soon with more videos.